his law.
Hear what Christ our Savior said. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophet.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Amen.
Each may take charge in his Christ.
Sitting on the bench. Everybody be all right. See the top, this is what Sister Nikki taught me when I had to teach. Church, and she couldn't get nobody, so she sent me a text the night before. And I just happened to look in the text and I answered it, so it worked out just fine. Great lesson, y'all. A lot of symbolism, a lot of stuff that we take for granted and stuff, but you know, it teaches us. Like sometimes we all, you know, you hear people, and it's bad when you start making things cliche, you know. Say, if you're gonna worry, don't pray, but if you're afraid, don't worry, you know. Sometimes we forget about just how powerful the God we serve is, you know. Deborah, leader in a national emergency. Deborah was like a influence as Cheryl. She would have been there. Had about 60 people looking at me, looking dead in my mouth. Y'all these glasses ain't doing. Well, I can't see nothing. I'm pretty blurred. But nevertheless, God will be done. Deborah. At the time, Deborah, a prophet, wife of Lebanon, was judging Israel. She used to sit, you know, under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Bethel. You know, and the Israelite came up to her for judgment. Judges 4:4-5. First thing about Deborah was, I won't say she was a powerful woman. She was all of it. Deborah, first of all, if you look in the first verse, you see that Deborah was a prophetess. She was also a wife, and she was also, you know, a judge. And as the lesson goes on and stuff, you find out not a judge in the typical sense of the word, because she had so many things. See, when God gave you assignment, they just say all the judge had to do was adjudicate the law. She had to do everything. She had to be somebody who consoled people, who judged people, somebody who also told people they were doing wrong, told people how they should be living, you know. So she had all the responsibility God gave her. But Deborah was the fourth judge of Israel. And she judged during the time of spiritual darkness. You know. Deborah was at the forefront when thing about I told him in I ain't gonna sit there and holler out, we use it to death, right? The stiff neck, you know. Children of Israel, stiff neck, people don't want to listen and stuff, you know. Children of Israel was more than that. Children of Israel was continuing, you know, to follow behind their neighbors, you know, unadulterated sinning throughout, you know. But the thing that made it so crucial and stuff was that this period, the spiritual darkness, occurred when Joshua died at 110 years of age, and it continued all the way through the kingship of Saul, where Saul was the state. Basically put 3 centuries. For 300 years, Israel did everything under the sun. They sinned once, You know, they disobeyed God, they rebelled against God, and they did their usual during this sin cycle that they were stuck in for 300 years and stuff. They continually do the same, like we would say today, the same old 76. Rebel against God. God would either send another prophet or another leader to try to talk to them, or he would send the enemy, you know, to deal with it. And then they would turn around and turn and repent, you know, and then whatever they did to get away, they say, well, God, he done saved us one more time. And they turn right around and did the same thing over and over. And they did this for 300 years, you know. So you can see, during that time when Joshua died, no centralized figure, you know, in the leadership position of Israel. They had people who God sent. The last one before this lesson take place was Edu. Edu had went and had killed the king of their chief enemy and stuff, you know. Kind of humorous sometimes. You have to sit there and read this stuff for yourself. Go back in the Judges and read the chapter before. And Edu had killed the last Canaanite king, you know, that was against the children of Israel. Big fat man, George, wore about 400 pounds. So Edu had made a dagger, if you would, on two ends, you know, had a blade. And so he kicked everybody out of the man's parlor. When he kicked everybody out of the parlor, he locked the door and he stuck this knife in the fat man's gut. He was so big, when he stuck him, the knife went in, the belly swallowed the knife. So the king ended up dying because the people kept waiting on Edu to come out. He done locked the door and closed all the windows, and he done eased out through a little crack. And when they finally broke in, by that time Edu done escaped out of the city. He gone. But the king man died because they couldn't tell. They thought he was just sleeping. And they said, the thing that got me was when you read it, they say, and the dirt came out of his belly. It was a big man. And that was the last king. And then when Edu died and stuff, the children of Israel saved again. And they went back to the same sin cycle. But this was when today's lesson take place. This is when Deborah come along and stuff, you know. She the next one God sent. And the thing about Deborah was divinely led. You know, the Spirit of God flowed through her 24/7, one no in between. And Deborah being like she was, even though she was, you know, a prophetess, which means she could predict and see the future. Divinely inspired coming from God. But she also performed, George, that's why I say she's a remarkable woman. Guess what? Still took her husband, you know. She still did all the things that you know, a wife or a family would do. Fun about the lesson and stuff don't say nothing about whether Deborah had children or not. You understand? So Deborah was strictly about serving God and doing the things of God and stuff, you know. And she did this, and during the time period when Deborah came along, Zabin, the king, you know, the rival king of the Canaanites, had been basically dogging Israel for 20 years, you know, before Deborah came along. So now here, Deborah come along and stuff, and Sisera was his captain over some military leader. So, you know, when you look at it, you look at Israel back in the same sin cycle. A new king got his army, you know, against him. They had a super general. I want you to remember this number: 900 military chariots. This is what, you know, the Canaanite king had at his disposal. That Sisera, his captain, had at his back. And the thing about it is, all the things Israel had was infantry. Yeah. But God said and told Deborah some things. He said, you know, I had to laugh and I said, it's you know you got to be powerful when you got a palm tree name after that you set up the judge, you know, your country, you know, set up the you know. And the thing about it is was that had already been allotted, you know, because remember when they crossed over, you know, Jordan River, eventually God had allotted what of the 12 tribes, what land they was going to get. See, by now, everybody had been allotted their land, you know. And don't forget, you know, just for you Bible scholars and stuff, how many tribes went across the Jordan? Anybody? How many crossed over? They put 12 stones in the wood, but two, you know, just for general knowledge. Benjamin, I think Benjamin and Dan, Benjamin would have been the youngest son. They didn't cross over. They said, we like where we are, you know, so they stayed. And this is what you eventually later on when they divided, that's where you end up with the southern tribe and the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. But God had parceled out the land for them to take, you know. Just a little tidbit threw in and stuff. See, sometimes when you're talking and stuff, you know, it's good to come back home where you can just be at ease and stuff. When you got about 60 people looking at your mouth, sometimes stuff get by you. But Deborah used to sit up under the palm with Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, where the children of Ephraim had to go for Deborah to judge them. You ever notice even when Jesus and his disciples used to rest in Capernaum, to get to Jerusalem, they had to go up, George. Understand? So now, it wasn't easy.
What did you say they had to go?
They always had to go up. They always said, when they went up, go up. In order to, it was a hilly country, you know? So travel wasn't easy. And once these people had been allotted all this land, well, guess what? Some of them had to travel from a far distance just to get and bring the problem to Deborah. And can you imagine walking on flat land and all of a sudden get to Deborah, you got to start going up the hill, you know? And it wasn't an easy task. You know, it was very difficult to get there, but the children of Israel, because they, you know, depended on her and stuff, that's what they did and shit. And she sent something to Barak, the son of Adonai from Kadesh. And they called and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, command you, position yourself at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 men from the tribe of Naphtali and the tribe of Zebulun. See? I asked the question to this old lady, 93 years old, shy cookie sheriff. Ooh, Lord. Much power, much love. Pastor said she taught him. And she looked at me, she said, I got my book late. So I got it and I went home that night. I was waiting on you. I said, oh, well, good. She said, because I know you was going to bring something to us and stuff. I said, well, you know, I did a trade secret. Between the time I got the text and somebody wanted me to do this, I had to stay up to 1 o'clock. You know, in the morning I didn't get a chance to finish, so I had to get back up at 4:30 to finish it before, you know, I had to get dressed for us to try to leave at 6:30. So I say, we even. And she started laughing. Well, I asked the question, starting up the lesson, I say, how many of y'all here think that, who read the lesson, think that Barak was scared, he wasn't, you know, he just wasn't for real? She said, I think Barak was, you know, was a chick. You know, he was scared. And I asked everybody said, I said, well, you know, you gotta look at Barak. You know, I say, Deborah was completely and fully sold out to the Lord. She didn't see no fear. You know, when you know the Lord got your front, got your side, and got your back, you know, over you and under you, you don't care what nobody try to, you know, do to you and stuff. You know that God, you know, will shall be done. And Deborah was that kind of soul out. She was totally, without any kind of thought whatsoever, you know, she was unwavering in her confidence in God. But Barak, I call it, I say, Barak had that hesitant faith. You know what I'm saying? You know, well, you know, sure, I know I'm supposed to trust the Lord, you know, but sometimes, you know, that human side of me get a little fearful, you know. go against this army, you know, I might die. And then I had to point it out to myself that God can take a little and make a lot out of it, you know. You remember when all the people had been when David was trying to escape from Saul and stuff, and he had all these men with him and stuff, you know, and they gonna go out and gonna take 600 men, they're gonna pursue the enemy, right? And God kept telling them, that's too many, you know? So he kept breaking the number down from 600, so you don't need that many, you know? And they said, hold up, we're chasing the whole army, you know, and 600 men. And so with God, a few is enough. It got down to it, God told him to take the men, the ones who was worthy, you know, and he told them up front. Like I said, I do think God and Jesus both have a sense of humor. God say the ones who take their hand and drink out of the brook, they're the ones you take with you. But the ones who lap like a dog to drink the water, leave them behind. Deborah telling Barak what God had commanded, told him to take 10,000 men. Now you know it's more than 10,000 men in 12 tribes of Israel. You know what I'm saying? And God told him, take 10,000 men. When you go up on Mount Tabor, and I want you to wait, until I tell you, you know, when to come down, you know. But she sent the psalmist to Barak, you know, told him the Lord of Israel commanded you, position yourself Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 men from the tribe of Bethel and the tribe of Zebulun. I would draw out Sisera. God had already laid out the plan. All Barak needed to do was just, George, I want you to be standing by that door at 12 o'clock. You know, because somebody going to come through the door at 12 o'clock that you need to talk to. You know? Now, no matter what nobody else do, you know what your design, you know, mission is that 12 o'clock to be by the door. You know? And then God let you know, saying, you're going to know who it is you need to talk to because, you know, such don't happen. Well, Barak got all this great news from Deborah, but he was still, you know, in his belief and stuff. And Sisera being the general of Jonathan's army, I told you, remember that 900, number 900? Well, this was the advent of what they call in history, the Iron Age. Most spears at this time were sharpened stones that were shaped, you know, into a point, you know, on a stick. But these people had 900 metal chariots. You know, now a horse-drawn chariot made out of wood would have been bad enough, but these was encased with metal. So guess what? You got 900 of these things, though, which means these people had the most technologically advanced army in the world at this time going against the Israelites. But who is the commander of the Israelite army? God. So Barak was just, you know, his little, I just need you to be there. Barak got scared. Barak got scared when you're looking down at the enemy with 900 chariots and stuff, you know, and he looked. Was he a coward, George, you think? Or was he a smart man? Well, I looked at Barak, you know, with genuine sincerity. You know, after all, you just a man, and you looking down, and you know the enemy that you got to face. He got chariots when ain't nobody got no chariot. First of all, the stuff, imagine what people looked like when they saw the first Model T Ford rolling off the assembly line, you know, by Henry Ford. The ones that had some sense got out of the way, you know, because they were still riding around with horse and buggies. And it's funny too, the first cars didn't have no brakes. Model T had no brakes. The only way they stopped it once they got it started was to run into a tree. Can you imagine how many people died, George, that had whiplash or broke necks? You know, finally somebody come up with the fact that you needed a brake in this vehicle that But moving forward, Sisera, did what Barak said to Deborah. And this is where everybody, that's why I asked everybody, was Barak scared or was he a coward? Sisera, had this powerful army, but Barak was a warrior. If God tell a warrior to move, remember how fiery Joshua was, with Moses? When they went to spy out the land of the giants? Only Joshua and Caleb came back, got all the spies that went over. The rest of them, hey, he can't do the man. We like grasshoppers, up under these people's feet, they so big. Only Caleb and Joshua stood up front. Yeah, we can take them. Come on, let's go. You ride there to look at a bunch of people 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall and stuff, and you ride there, hey, maybe 5, 6, or 6 feet, Saul, being about 6'4", 6'5", was one of the taller, Israelites it was, So most of them was average height. But Barak didn't have that kind of zeal. He's kind of on the cautious side. That's why I say he had a hesitant faith. He trusted God, but he didn't trust God to do what he said he was going to do. So he asked Deborah, straight up. Key part of the lesson, y'all. Look at verse 8. Barak said to her, if you will go with me, I will go, but I will not go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go. And this is why you're talking. See, Deborah wore a lot of hats. Like I told you, she was a prophetess, she was a wife, she was a judge, but she was also a civil magistrate because she had to intervene in civil problems of the tribe. Because judges didn't have a traditional job, just you're a criminal, so I'm going to sentence you, or you. She had to do a whole lot of things according to what it was God prescribed for her to do. And on top of that, she also had to play the general, for the nation of Israel, because, hey, ain't no command. Joshua gone now. See, Joshua had all them titles. Joshua was fiery, he was ready to go fight. But Barak was a little hesitant. So Deborah looked at him, and she already told him what God had said, right? And then she summoned Barak, to Zebulun, summoned Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and the 10,000 men, they went up to behind him, and Deborah went with him. Then Deborah said to Barak, who wants the guy there, right? Hey, get up! Get up, Sheriff. Time to go. Barak was probably shaking in his boots, But, she told my brother, get up, Up for the day, this is the day when the Lord has given Sisera to your hands. Has not the Lord gone out before you? So Barak went down to Mount Tabor, with 10,000 men and warriors following him. Wouldn't go. Scared to go. You telling a married woman, who got to be the prophetess and the judge that God appointed this time, well, if you go, I'll go with you. But if you don't go to battle with me, I ain't going. And I asked everybody that ever had shots, you think Barak was a coward? He was just intent and scared. And everybody had to think for themselves, I said, well, that little Barak in me too, It ain't about trusting God. It's about, hey, what eyes you looking with? With the spiritual eyes, you already see the battle complete. With the worldly eyes, you're saying, man, ain't no way in the world we can defeat these people. And show you how the devil was working on Wednesday night, 4 days, Thursday morning. My thing was, I think it started raining on them, But somewhere I read in the lessons that the riverbank that they was, around, the riverbank, because God got a way. When God send you to do something, God will always make a way, for you to escape. And He'll also make a way for you to achieve victory if you to have faith enough to follow Him, unconditionally. Well, be as it may, because this was God's battle to start with, and Barack and Deborah was just some pods that he had plugged in to fit. All of these mellow chariots that he was so afraid of, what happened when water hit dirt? And enough water hit the dirt that it turned sluggish. And then it get deep. They all got stuck in the mud. So here's this mighty army of chariots, you know, stuck down in mud, couldn't move. And now here all of a sudden, see, you tough as long as the chariot's moving. But when they're stuck in the mud, and most chariots had two people on it, you know, one to drive and one to throw the spears, you know. So you're talking about 900 chariots times 2. So now, who got the majority now when you got 10,000? You got 10,000 men coming down on 900 chariots. Now, see, God will always fix it so if you follow him, that you're going to come out with an advantage. They stuck in the mud, couldn't move. Barack finally got his courage to go on attack. So he got running. You know, he ran to a friend of a friend that he was all right with and went to his house. You know? Yeah, bro. You know, was, I won't say he was a traitor, but he was a turncoat. He used to be on the children of Israel side. Then he switched, you know? The side. The thing about it is, his friend, assessor, but guess what? His wife didn't. God took this relatively unknown woman who's not, you know, of the tribe of Israel, you know? She's basically not with the enemy, you know? But she was somebody God used. And this woman, by nature, they was tent makers. So this woman's whole life, her job was, like most women did, was to help put up the tents. So the lady was used to handling a nail with a hammer. And she probably had to be strong, y'all. Because you know, when you try to drive something in, I find that out in the military, and they didn't know what I'm talking about, 200 passes. I was in Germany, we were watching steel tent pegs just bending in half because they're trying to beat them in that first layer of that old frozen soil in Germany. And they just collapsed and bent until somebody got that old Maddox, you know, handling that, put that old head on it, and that pick, and chipped off them first 2 layers to get to where the soft stuff was. Then the tent peg would go in. This woman let him in the house, husband one there. She became a heroiness, you know, Jael, you know, wife of Deborah took a tent peg. It's a big old nail. Big old nail. Called him. Hey, she done brought him in and welcomed him because during this time period, one of the most culturally respected thing of everybody was that when you had a guest to come, you had to show hospitality. And that's what this area was known for, you know? And so, being hospitable, she invited the man in, even though her husband wasn't there, because they was free. Well, you know, truth be told, her husband was free, but guess what? This woman that got the word somewhere, George, baby, hey, God had talked to her too. But she sat down there, gave him some milk to drink. He got all comfortable, you know, because he was tired and weary from running, trying to escape. Gave him the milk, and he probably got sleepy. And she put a cover on him, so he laid down to relax and rest. You understand? Comfortable, ain't got no work. Look here. Then he had nerve to tell her, Sharon, look here, Sharon, I want you to stand by the door. And if somebody show up, I want you to tell him that if you ain't got nobody in the house, and if he calls my name, tell him you ain't seen me, you don't know about me. I said, all right, yeah, I'll do that for you. And guess what? As soon as she heard him snore, I say, as soon as she heard him snoring, because you know he had started snoring because he was tired. Been running all night long trying to escape. assembly started laughing, Sherry, because they visualized, like, you know what kind of shoes them folks had back during the day? Them old claw-looking shoes with the turn-up toes and stuff. I said, everybody ever seen Sinbad, Aladdin? And everybody started laughing, right? Because that visual picture was these little turn-up shoes. So she tipped through her house. And he in there snoring. 10 feet right this long. Sash nail. And of all the places to hit him with, you know, most people might have tried to beat you in the, you know, try to hit the brain, right? She decided she was going to hit him in the temple. All through that little soft tissue right there. And this lady, I said, not only, Sheriff, did she hit it enough and hard enough, but the book said she drove the tent peg through, that it embedded itself in the ground underneath. Well, when it died, you know, you stolen 1 minute and you're alive, and the next minute, hey, you done left here, don't know how you left.
But when I read that, I was like, wow. I mean, it hits you just to think about it. She took a 10-piece, drove it through the tip of his head, and went all the way through his head. That's kind of rough. But this is me. I was thinking, why did she just bust him in the head?
Well, first of all, remember the nature of God? That God can use anything and anybody. What she had done culturally, you know, and physically, you know, this ain't something you usually associate with women doing. You know, this is just like this other hairiness in the Bible, you know, that cut the king's throat that time, you know, when he was sleeping, you know. See, this ain't something, this is something men normally engage in. And so, but who did God choose to use? Yeah. You know? Because God has already set his plan in motion. God knows everything. Knew the man wasn't going to be home.
Well, frankly, in like verse 9 it says, the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And so maybe she was the destined person.
Already prophesied.
Yeah.
Deborah had already prophesied
Yeah.
because God had told her what was going to happen. Barak just didn't process the message. God done laid this roadmap out for y'all. You got to do is just be where you're supposed to be, you know, and do what you're told to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I ain't going to say that Barak was a coward. Barak was just a man, you know. And he had, as a man, he had emotions and fears like everybody else. But guess what? His problem was, unlike Deborah, he didn't put his faith and his trust in God to deliver on what he said he would do. You know, and that sometimes, and that's just like with us. Children of Israel was enslaved in Egypt for 450 years, but they had faith enough to keep praying. How many years of black folks enslaved in this country? 400 years. Now, we ain't no different than children of Israel. Look here. When God helps us, we do good, you know. But I was sitting there, me and George was sitting there talking the last day, Friday. And I told George, I said, you know what's funny, George? I said, you know, you look at when all the leaders that God had appointed to help Israel died, Israel, you know, regressed. They didn't go forward. They regressed and got worse than they was from that point. I said, since 1968, we still stuck following the dream. We in what? 2026. Dr. King died in 1968. We done had all these leaders come forth, but ain't none of them been able to take us from the dream forward.
Well, when you think about it, though, I listened to this whole documentary on Clarence Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at who's really taken the
But see, Clarence, he was was never leadership. Clarence Thomas was a Oreo plant from the start. Clarence Thomas had never saw himself as being black.
Well, I thought he belonged to the Black Panthers.
No, Clarence Thomas was an Oreo who tried to seduce Barbara Jordan from Texas, and she told him, "I got a husband, you ain't qualified." And he tried to blackball her career. See, Clarence Thomas was one of those, what we refer to, Cheryl, in the black vernacular, he was a pure Oreo. He was black on the outside, but he was whiter than any white person that he wanted to follow, you know?
Wow.
And Clarence Thomas has always been that, since the day he was appointed. Look who appointed him. Who was president in 6 days before Johnson took over? Who took over? Johnson didn't appoint him. When Johnson last time, when Johnson went out there and stuff here, huh? No. You know, hey, Clarence Thomas was he was their mouthpiece. Everybody couldn't understand why one of the best generals in the world could work, you know, to work for under, you know, the Bush, you know. See, they couldn't, Colin Powell, everybody just couldn't see how can Colin Powell be the full-size general working with all these people that's doing everything under the sun, you know. But see, you have to understand one thing, you know, it's a place, and you understand, and I share this with some people, you gotta have somebody at the table anyway, Cheryl, even if you're not getting what you want done, you understand? Somebody gotta be there, and Colin Powell was the top dog. He was over the that staff of all them generals. He was the general in charge of all the generals.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, as far as like voting rights and things like that, I mean, you could say that Clarence Thomas is really the person who is destroying all of those things.
Clarence Thomas was a political appointment. Voter Right Act of 1965, Voter Right Bill 64, Act of 65, all that was passed. And then Clarence Thomas was somewhere out there on the sideline playing politics, playing a little judge who was kissing butt, you know? And by the time the Republicans got in there and stuff, you know, 6-8 was a pivotal year in this country. Politically, economically, militarily, you know. 6-8 was when they decided to send more men to Vietnam. They decided to try to bomb Hanoi and everything else. So the war escalated. It went everything. And see the thing, Cheryl, that got me, and they didn't know what I'm talking about. During that time, everybody black in this area went to, you know, to the board, you know, to be, you know, everybody paid for stuff. 1A. You did for military duty, you know? I ain't care what I saw a boy had a stack of medical files that big, he had a bandage on the leg, couldn't hardly walk. And the man stumped his face and said, "You good." So see, he was a lost in time, he's still lost in time. And rather than the most hated black man for the position he took, he know absolutely nothing, you know? And still ain't know nothing, because he was a boss man, you know? And see, sometimes, like I said, we stuck, nobody was able to enthuse or generate the kind of calm and the kind of push that Dr. King did. You understand? Nobody was able to take that mantle and move forward, you know? And see, when you stuck in the sand and everybody's sick in the head, cause let's be for real now. Like the children, hey, for black folks, from the tail end of 68, the 70s, you know what they were doing, Sheriff? In the 70s?
I know what I was doing, but I don't know.
I tell you what black folks do in the 70s. They are 20 years old and the party was on. Everybody got some complacent. Living was good. Everybody finally get some jobs they had never got before and stuff, you know. Everybody was eating good. the same untruth and perpetuated the same nonsense. See, because that's long far removed from Barack. See, so nothing changed. You know? Every president we had all had the same thing. Good morning, little people. Hey, they was all the same color, and they all told the same, untruths when it came to black folks. So nothing really changed. And look at us today and stuff. You think the average black person worried about Trump? Ain't nothing changed here. Hey, we always had the least and the less. What we got under Trump? The least and the less. Now, the professional athletes and the millionaires, they might have lost a little of their money because they had to spend a little bit more. But guess what? As far as the common people concerned, ain't nothing changed. Ain't nothing changed. You still got the same struggle. I got to have my money to do what? Pay my lights, water, gas, I got to keep the little hoopty or car I got running, Hey, and if I got a house, I still got to pay that same mortgage. Ain't nothing changed. Because guess what? As long as you have no economic base that's what you can project from, see? Like fish in a barrel. I was 20 years old, Sharon, I was trying to find this magic elixir that could help black folks. Well, I thought about it long and hard, and I finally found a way to do it. I don't know whether y'all are familiar with, when I was in school, I had benefit thing about when you went to college, like Tallahassee was and stuff. They got all of the activists came in. I saw Erich Cleaver, Julian Bonds 2 times, all these people, they came in feet, I saw Sonia Chan, and Giovanni, the first, the original. And so it was all we had gotten discussion. Then we think I found myself, we have economic base to work from. I said, well, it's simple that we can have one if everybody. You take 10 families could be free. 10 people start out, one of them, all children. None of them college age, when they're young, 2, 3, make them pay $1,000 a month. Now, 10 people pay $100 for 12 months, how much money you got at the end of the year? $1,200 a month, times 12.
Are you gonna tell us, or are you gonna make us do the math?
Well, see, you got 10 people that pay $12, okay? That's 1,200.
Yeah.
That's $1,200. Now you take $1,200, for 12 months. Understand?
Right.
14,000. 1,000 for 1 day. Pretty much. Pretty much. For 10 years. Got your math done?
Okay.
1,200
for 10 years.
12, hey, just say 1,400 for 10 years.
Okay.
Now what you got?
14,000.
No. All right. Now, your children still ain't college age. You understand? You keep paying this. The next year you stack that money on stack. Now, in a 10-year period, when you done stacked all that money, but we're not sure. By the time these kids get age, get ready to go to school and stuff, you got to get some total about $140,000 to work with. Now, help these kids when these kids go to school. You've been saving this money because you got to put it in some kind of money market or savings some way to generate some interest, which means you will have more money. But they may be able to put more.
Oh, you mean to be part of the group?
You part A, so you're enhancing. What you're doing is just
Yeah.
regrowing from inside. But you start economic base because you got some money to work with. And it can work with the church, it can work with the school, it can work with friends, it can work with anybody. But you gotta have the commitment. See, if you have no economic base to start from, what you're looking at on Main Street is not the Main Street that I grew up with, that George grew up with, that Eddie grew up with here in St. Joe. All right? We had 3 grocery stores, 2 gas stations. We had a drugstore on the corner with a man who practiced dentistry. You know, we had 2 funeral homes. That was just what was here in St. Joe. You know, that's the St. Joe we grew up in. We didn't go to town. Then we go to that old Dairy King thing like they had to go get some ice cream or something, you know, or a fish sandwich. But
Well, I there's a Main Street in those homes in there because we don't have segregation. There are some ways that all small rural communities are the same, especially when you have a major business that abandons you and leaves you with nothing but toxic, land that you can't do anything with. I grew up in Middletown. They left. Champion International took all the woods, got as much as they could, and then they did this huge scam, got out of cleaning up that mill site. And it's sit there, and there's no economy in the community I grew up in.
sure.
So I get it on some levels. It's the same thing. It's being taken advantage of by the powers that be and being left with.
The power to be gonna always try to explore. And the thing about the stuff is, what a lot of people miss the boat, and Eddie and George said to it, and everybody knows. If your daddy worked in the mill, you couldn't work. Now,
You couldn't work.
no, that's why everybody had
That
to leave.
wasn't where I grew up.
That's why everybody had to
Our
leave.
whole-
It
they
was,
got
hey,
family members across the country
no,
working in the mill.
no, if your daddy worked in the mill and stuff, and then had no nepotism, you couldn't, so,
Because they might have some impact on the way
well,
paper is made.
see, I mean,
Money in one family.
well, they don't.
Oh, too much money in
Well,
the family.
you block. But see, that didn't happen.
Wow.
That didn't happen across town.
No.
And you have to understand too,
Wow.
majority of the people that worked at the paper mill here in St. Joe weren't from St. Joe. Them people were driving from Alpha, driving from Blountstown,
Okay.
and everywhere to drive into St. Joe, to work. And then going back home to where they came from. It wasn't like the total population of St. Joe was working at the mill. It was only a handful of people working at the side because that's how they set it up.
Well, that makes
This
sense
one,
then how
this
families
was never supposed to be here.
moved away.
It was never supposed to be no North or St. Joe. This one even envisioned as this. Man, we gave up more than we got. You know that little thing they call White City right across the bridge? That's where the black folks was. You had to pay to come across the river on the ferry. Black folks left there. Want somebody to come in St. Joe paper company.
Yeah.
So black folks live in Haiti. No white. The horse and the take, and that, First thing they're gonna dare in your face is, I give you $40,000 for the land. Why am I giving you 40? You gonna pay me $40,000 for something less than 2 blocks from the Gulf of Mexico? This is beachfront property. Why should I sell you beachfront property for $40,000? Mr. Johnson asked me one time when I was in the hospital. He said, "Vanessa, how much you think your 2 lots you got worth?" I said, "Well, Mr. Johnson, seeing how this beachfront property, I take $2 million. Understand? But that's neither here nor there. We just gotta wake up, quit sleeping. Gotta come out that dozer when we get in and stuff. Everybody gonna have to retune. And we gonna have to do it before we leave here. Because see, the youngsters ain't gonna do it. You ever notice now, for every, and I want you to look at something, Cheryl, per capita for the number of people, poor St. Joe got more people walking around here with master's degrees and higher than you're gonna find in a lot of big cities that people from St. Joe done accumulate. But A, went to the same school, had the same black teachers, the same dribblers and everybody there, but it's been lost. But neither here, we're gonna stop being like children of Israel. They did something after 450 years of slavery. We started doing something and we got in the middle of the stream. Dr. King died, everybody got scared and backed up. They did what the disciples did when Jesus got crucified. They went and locked up in a room and started trying to hide because they thought somebody was coming to get them next. Even though Jesus told them to tarry, tarry in Jerusalem, in that room until the Holy Spirit come. You can't be scared. Have something. Hey, how the thing the Bible says, there can be no testimony without the shedding of blood, which means so you see, there are people that died and gave up something, but guess what? Nobody took advantage of it. Now, in this, more folks gonna have to reunite that. To finish the lesson. And Daryl, when it was all over with, and JL had put put that spike in there, she told Rob, and he kills him. He heard he goes in, she drove the nail to his head, and Rob, Daryl stopped and rejoiced. Over pursued Sister Rob. When he came into her tent, behold, Sister Rob lay dead, and the nail was in his temple. And Barak and praising God. Marvelous story. Lesson to be learned is trust God. Trust God. Not human emotion, but human nature. Trust God, and God will always do what he says. That's great lesson. Cora, what you got?
morning, everyone. Today, class into June 7th, 2020. Teachers present. Total present today. Bishop Andrew, Reverend Christopher T. Jordan, Pastor, Brother Clarence Monette, Superintendent, Brother Eddie Fields, Assistant Superintendent. Bible verse. At that time, Deborah, a prophet, wife, and Lapida, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel, in the hill country of Ephraim. The Israelites Judges 4, verses 4 to 5.
Thank you, Cheryl. Pastor, you want to come on do it? You know you gonna let
I'm gonna do it after they do their review.
okay. Cool.
Good morning. Okay, we learned about a lady named, what was her name? Say it loud. Say it loud. Okay, she was the wife of, what was that man's name? Say it again. Okay, our book, we had a true or false session, and we found out that some of those things were false. They said that they had an army of 20,000 people. Was that true? How many people did they have? 10 what? 10,000. Wow. I can't hear you. 10 what? Okay. We also learned that who is always with us? God. And Bethel? When you draw on TV wall? So we shouldn't be if mom is not with us. Okay, thank you.
Pastor, may our youth come and share Bible Discovery Hour convention?
Well, I was there. Personally, we did quite a bit. There was like a lot, I will say. But while there, the only real things that I most remember about Deborah, because there was a lot that they told us, was that she had became a judge. And I personally think that's a feat of love.
And she was what? Was she fearful?
Nah, she was really courageous and brave.
Okay. All right. Come back, Jamal. Right. We just want to thank you all for allowing us to go to Bible Discovery Hour convention.
Good morning to everyone, to our teacher, to our youth teacher for today, to our youth, our visiting youth, our nieces, and to our regular youth, and they were in Bible studies. And Jamal, what's that about that, bro?
She became a judge.
You said something else that she was fearless, right?
Yeah, she was free.
I like that. Yeah. Interesting lesson. And I'm going to actually take a different approach. As Brother Fennell was teaching, I'm always trying to figure out which way I'm going to do my review. During a time of turmoil, during a time of uncertainty, during a time of war, God raised a judge and a prophet. And it didn't look like the normal judge and prophets that they normally raised, because he raised a woman up because during that time a lot of the man was fearful, bashful, and nowhere to be found. So he raised Deborah, and people confided in her.
But I just wanted to throw that out there. But what I wanted to look at, a question was asked, was Barack scared? I'm going to take it a different way. Scared, probably. But he knew that God needed to be with them in order for him to win. So he was ill-informed. Because he thought God was with Deborah. God was with all of them, right? And because of his hesitation, his name wasn't fully glorified. What do I mean by that? Even in Hebrews, it still talks about Barak being faithful, right? About his faith. But the victory went to somebody else, all right? A lot of the times, we got to stop being dependent on other people. Yes, we still get to the battle. Yes, we still a part of the victory, but you still ain't got your full blessing because you were dependent on somebody else, right? But because watch this, when Deborah called Barak, she had already got word that they were going to win. So what did she do? She called the person that was in charge of getting the victory, right? She called a person that God had already placed in battles before and prepared for that time. But because I will go, but the hand, but I will go, but the victory is going to fall into the hands of a woman and not you, right? The general of the army, the one that has 10,000 soldiers following him, wasn't responsible for one of the biggest victories of the time. Why wasn't he responsible? Because he didn't flee, because he hesitated, right? So what does that tell us today? It tells us some of us are hesitating on our calling and somebody else is getting that glory, right? Yeah, we're still being blessed. So I say it this way. Would you rather be blessed with $100 or $1,000? Would you rather be blessed with 1,000 or 10,000? Right? Some of us are getting $100 blessings when the Lord is saying, I'm trying to open up the gates and open up your windows and pour out a blessing that you're having to receive, but you're not going to the well. Right? Somebody else is going to the well. Somebody else is lowering down the bucket, and somebody else is pulling it up, so they're getting the whole bucket, and all you're getting is a cup full. You're still being blessed. You're still being saved. You're still being delivered. But you're still not walking in your calling. The other thing I want to look at right here, because Brother Eddie asked a question about jail. The tent, think about this. When Deborah made that comment that a lot of people, when they read that, think it was Deborah that was going to get the victory, right? Deborah actually didn't deliver them. She prophesied and told them what to do, right? It was another woman that did. The Lord was already preparing her. Why was he preparing her? Because during that time, the women was the ones that normally set up the tents, right? The women was the ones that was specialized in hospitality. So when Sisera ran to the tent, Jael was already there because she was already hospitable, right? God had already prepared her to be hospitable. But not only that, she already knew how to use a peg and a hammer, right? So sometimes you got to realize, don't look at what you don't have in life. Look at what you do have. Because the Lord will use what you have to get where you need to go. What do I mean? Look at Moses. Moses had a staff. That staff that Moses used was to fight off lions, tigers, and bears and all of that. The Lord turned that staff into a serpent. The Lord turned that staff into something that flowed blood from it. The Lord turned that staff into what he needed. Look at the woman, look at the widow, that when she went to Elijah, she said, all I have is a little oil. He turned that little oil and turned her and paid off all her debts with that little oil. The Lord will use what we have. The Lord is preparing all of us for something. All right. The problem is, are you running to Nineveh? Or are you hesitating to go to the battle? Either way, if you're running or hesitating, somebody else is getting your blessing. But let me rephrase it. Somebody else is getting the glory. Yes, you're getting your blessing. But wouldn't you like your whole blessing? Let me do it like this way for the adults, and I got one for the youth. Tithes time just came around, right? You done went to the tithes people, and they told you you're getting a $50,000 return, right? And when your bank, when it hits your bank, you don't have $500. You're gonna raise purity fee, right? You're gonna raise all kind of you know what, right? Because it went to somebody, and then you find out the $45,000 went to the person that prepared the tithes, right? Then to kick it, right? Watch this. Then to kick it all off, you was the one prepared it. They just mailed it, right? Stop allowing you prepare for all lives. And they're getting the benefits of your harvest. All right? That's what it all boils down to. Barak hesitated. And because he hesitated, yes, he's going down in history, but we're not talking about, watch it. We're not talking about the victory that Barak had, right? The question about Barak is what? Was he scared? Yeah. I did a sermon a while back, and I may have to do it again. Sister Linda already knows what I'm going to say. You got to be like the artist Bone Crusher. I ain't never scared. It's back in the day. You. I got a question. Would you rather your parent when they go to the store and they walk down that Nike aisle in the shoe store, and you see them pair of Jordans, would you rather one shoe or both?
Okay.
You'd rather one shoe or both? Both, right? So to our youth, don't hesitate on your blessing and allow somebody else to get your shoes.
Me, Pastor, I still haven't got past the part where Jill took that spike, stuck it to his temple, and bam it through his head.
And watch this. And all she did was do what she normally does. Right?
Yeah.
To us, it looked grueling.
Yeah.
To her, a tent wasn't in the ground until it was all the way through. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of us, the Lord has prepared us to do stuff, and we stop short.
Yeah.
She showed the difference between her and Barak was she didn't leave the job half done.
No, she did. She didn't leave the job half done.
And I overlook one other point too, Pastor, everybody need to understand. Deborah wasn't the only female prophetess in the Bible, you know. Anna never left the temple. She was always praising. Then Isaiah wife was the prophet said, God have always used women when men wouldn't step up, you know, to do what had to be done. And even today, I sat down and looked at about 10 men in the house and what, about 50 women, Joe? When I was up there teaching, I said, oh, Lord, 50 women and a handful of men. And I said, we got to step up be no evil.
That's right. That's another sermon. We going there, Pastor.
And to the guys, a lot of the reasons why we're not showing up, because we have to go back to when Moses came along. What was the decree? Let the women live,
Yeah.
kill the men.
Yeah.
When Jesus was born, what was it? Kill the man.
Yeah.
Right. What are we doing now?
Killing the man.
So if men don't help keep other men alive, how can we expect a woman to do it?
Church school was open at 9:35 a.m. with the singing of Yield Not to Temptation, Apostles' Creed, prayer, responsive reading, lesson, text, and decalogue. Key verse at that time, Deborah, a prophet, wife of Lipido, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites came up to her for judgment. Judges 4th chapter, 4th to 5th verse. Review the lesson by the pastor, Reverend Jordan, and then the beginners class did a review, outstanding review. Bible Discovery Hour review by Jamal and Ricardo. Superintendent Brother Eddie Fields, Reverend Christopher Jordan, pastor. Total present today 11. Total contribution $67. Can I get a motion on the
So
motion? Got a second? All in favor? All right. Let's stand for our church school creed.
one thing, brother Ed, I want to make this announcement now, and I will again. So take a look at our new envelopes. Pastor has made new envelopes. We will talk about them during the announcements. But if you look on it, you have the spot for the tithes, you have general offering, you have building fund, you have mission/benevolent. That's for the benevolent offering /missions. You also have Sunday school/Bible Discovery Hour. Then also you have on there the other. The other will always be if you're giving for on 5th Sundays for WMS, if you're giving 2nd Sundays for YPD, if you're giving 1st Sundays for the Usher Union, or you're giving actually 3rd Sundays for the WMS Coalition. That is what the other is used for. So take a look at them. Let me know what you think, and we're going to start using these for everything, even guests. So we can make sure we're taking an account of our stewardship.
Our church school creed. I believe every church school must grow and grow, and I will make it a top priority to make it so. Every member Christian, every Christian worker, every worker trained, so the worker need not be ashamed. This we ask in Jesus. Come and study together, so we try next time together to study God's word. May His rich blessings reside with you, and may His grace be eternally yours. Amen.
Okay, come on, we're going to see you. Get your blanket. Start.
And watch this. All the end up costing was them. It's these envelopes. We'll make some more.
This is what we are. And this is so.
Doing the cheese, she's doing good.